The rain was falling hard that night, cold and endless, in the darkest corner of the city. Near the trash bins and broken bricks, a girl sat alone. She looked like a beggar. But not just any beggar. Her eyes were glowing blue, her skin pale like snow, and her face, half covered in dirt, still looked. Not human, not fully. People passed by quickly, their umbrellas blocking their view. Or maybe they just didn't want to see her. She was wearing torn clothes, too thin for the winter wind. Her body was shaking, her hands wrapped around her knees. She whispered in a weak voice, "Food, please." Anything. One man looked down at her and shook his head, walking away. A woman covered her child's eyes and pulled him to the other side of the street. No one stopped, no one cared. She looked at the passing people, and then, slowly, with trembling hands, she reached out and opened her coat just a little, showing her bare shoulder. "I can offer myself," she whispered, just ... Food, but still, no one stopped. Maybe they were scared. Maybe they thought she was diseased or dangerous. Or maybe they just didn't see a person at all. The rain grew colder, and her lips turned blue. Her stomach growled loud enough to echo. In the alley walls, she lowered her head, and her glowing eyes slowly dimmed. Then, a pair of boots stopped near her. She didn't look up at first. She had seen this before. People stopped, looked, and walked away. But then she heard a deep voice. Calm but serious, "You'll freeze out here." She raised her head slowly, blinking rain from her lashes. The man standing in front of her had a rough beard, a long coat, and eyes that didn't look away from hers. He didn't seem afraid. He took off his coat without a word and knelt down, wrapping it around her thin shoulders. Her eyes widened. No one had touched her in weeks. "Why?" she asked, her voice dry and broken. "You need help," he said simply, "and no one else is helping." "I have nothing to give you," she said. "I am nothing." He looked at her again, more closely this time. He saw the strange lines on her skin, the strange light in her eyes. He wasn't sure what she was, but he saw pain, hunger, and fear. He stood up and reached out his hand. "Come," he said, "you can rest at my place." She hesitated, then slowly placed her hand in his. His grip was strong, warm, and human. They walked through the rain, two strangers, both broken in different ways. He didn't ask her name, and she didn't ask his. The city around them was silent, except for the sound of water running down the streets. When they reached his small apartment, he opened the door and let her in. She looked around carefully. There were books, old photos, and a small heater buzzing in the corner. He gave her a towel and pointed to the bathroom. "You can clean up. I'll find you something to eat." She nodded and walked in, her steps slow, like she wasn't sure this was real. He cooked something simple, rice and eggs, when she came back. Her face was cleaner, her hair wet but no longer covered in dirt. She looked young but tired, as if she had lived 1,000 years. He placed the food in front of her, and she stared at it, then at him. "Go on," he said. "It's yours." She began to eat, fast at first, like an animal, then slower, like she remembered how to be gentle. Tears fell from her eyes as she chewed, and she didn't wipe them. He watched her. "Silent, thank you," she said at last. "I didn't think anyone would help me." "Why were you out there?" "Ha," he asked, softly. She looked down, holding the spoon tight. "They threw me out," she said. "They said I was wrong, broken, unwanted." "Who?" he asked. She didn't answer, but her glowing eyes flashed for a moment. "I'm not from here," she whispered. "I wasn't born, I was made." The room fell silent. The man sat back in his chair, eyes narrowing. He had seen strange things in his life: wars, machines, monsters, but this was something different. She looked up at him with a question in her eyes. Would he throw her out too? He didn't. He stood up, walked to a shelf, and pulled down a first aid kit. "Let's clean those wounds," he said. You're safe here for now." She smiled faintly for the first time, but outside, in the shadows of the night, something was watching, something with red eyes and metal skin, and it wasn't here to help her. The rain had stopped, but the silence inside the apartment was heavier than before. The girl sat on the couch, still holding the empty plate like it was treasure. She watched the man who had saved her, quiet, strong, and strange. He didn't ask many questions, and he didn't speak unless he had to. He moved like someone trained, someone used to danger. His apartment was small but clean. Too clean for someone living alone. There were no pictures on the wall, no personal items, just weapons, books, maps, and a clock that ticked louder than the silence. "Who are you?" she asked at last. The man looked at her, then walked to the window, checking the street below. "No one important," he said. "Not anymore." She tilted her head. "But you helped me." He gave a short nod, because someone should have. She stared at him a moment longer, then said, "They called me Subject X-19. He didn't answer, but his hand tightened around the curtain. "They made me in a lab, mixed DNA, alien and human," she continued, her voice calm but sad. "I wasn't supposed to survive." The man turned and looked at her with sharp eyes. "You escaped?" he asked. She nodded. "I ran when the power failed during a transfer." He walked to a locked drawer and pulled out a file, yellowed with age. He flipped through it quickly, then stopped on a photo, her photo. "X-19, he muttered. "I've seen you before." Her eyes widened. "You worked with them?" "No," he said quickly. "I fought against them." He closed the file and sat down across from her. "Back then, I was a soldier," he said. "They sent us to shut down illegal experiments, black sites hidden from the world." She nodded slowly. "Then why is that file in your house?" "I took it," he replied, "to remind myself of the things I failed to stop." The room fell silent again. Outside, the night air was still, but something was moving in it. Something not human. Inside, the girl stood up and looked around the room. Her fingers brushed over a small metal device on the shelf. Suddenly, her body froze, and her eyes turned brighter blue. The device clicked, and a red light blinked. She dropped it, breathing hard. "They're close." The man was already moving, picking up a pistol and a small black bag. "How close?" he asked, loading the gun without emotion. "I don't know," she said, her voice shaking. "They can smell me, track my energy." "Then we leave now," he said. Tossing her a dark hoodie and a backpack, she grabbed them and followed him without question. As they left the apartment, he glanced back once, just once. His eyes stayed on a photo frame face down on a dusty shelf. No one had touched it in years. They walked through empty streets, keeping to the shadows. The girl followed his every move. He knew how to avoid cameras, how to blend in. He moved like a ghost in a city of blind machines. Finally, they reached an old warehouse on the edge of the district. He unlocked the door with a fingerprint and stepped inside. It was dark, cold, and full of old tech and supplies. "This place is off-grid," he said. "No signals, no scanners." She collapsed onto a blanket on the floor, breathing fast. "I'm tired," she said, "but I don't know how to sleep anymore." He crouched beside her, placing a small, warm light near her head. "Close your eyes," he said gently. "You're safe for now." She looked at him, soft. "You never told me your name," he hesitated, then whispered. "Names don't matter to dead men." Then he stood and walked to the far corner of the warehouse, opening a metal case. Inside were files, weapons, and one small photo of a girl who looked almost like her, half human, half alien. He closed it. Slowly, his face cold and hard, but behind him, the girl had opened her eyes again, and this time they were glowing brighter than ever. She sat up slowly and whispered to herself, "He doesn't know what I really am." The night was not quiet anymore. Somewhere far away, a signal had been received. A red dot blinked on a screen deep underground, and a voice whispered, "Target found." Back in the warehouse, the man didn't sleep. He sat near the door with a rifle across his lap, eyes open, heart steady. The girl lay under a blanket. But her mind was wide awake. She was listening, sensing the energy around them. She could feel them now, machines with legs. Drones with eyes, shadows without voices. "They're coming," she said, softly. "I can feel the hunt begin." The man didn't flinch. "How many?" She closed her eyes. 4 drones, 1 scout, 2 hunters, and something else. He looked at her. Something else. She nodded. "It's not alive, but it thinks like a killer." He stood and started packing quickly. "We leave now." They moved through the back door. Slipping into the foggy city, the air was thick and quiet. Like it was holding its breath. Suddenly, a soft worry sound echoed above them. The man grabbed her arm and pulled her into a narrow tunnel beneath the street. Just as a black drone passed overhead, scanning with red lights, they crouched in the darkness. The girl breathing fast. "This isn't normal," she whispered. "They shouldn't find me this fast." He looked at her sharply. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," she said. "But maybe someone turned me on." "What does that mean?" he asked, voice cold. "I'm not just alive," she said. "I'm a beacon." He stared at her as silence fell again. Then, he opened a hidden door at the end of the tunnel, leading into an old subway control room. Inside were screens, maps, and weapons. He tossed her a small device. "Put this on your neck." She hesitated. "What is it?" "It hides your energy," he said, "even from the ones who built you." She put it on, and for a moment, her eyes dimmed. She gasped. Like something inside her had been muffled. "It feels like silence in my blood," she said. "Good." He replied, "Now they'll have to search, blind." But outside, the hunter units had arrived. They didn't walk, they glided, silent machines with skin like black armor and eyes like burning wires. One of them touched the ground and whispered, in a robotic voice, "The signal was here." Another replied, "The prototype is active. Locate and retrieve." Inside the control room, the man was setting traps, laser wires, and shock mines. "You planned for this?" she asked, surprised. "I've seen this before." He said, "Not with you, but with something like you." "You mean other test subjects?" she said, voice low. He nodded. 3 years ago, one escaped in the North Zone. "What happened?" she asked. He loaded his weapon and said one word, "Dead." The girl looked away, her glowing eyes soft with sadness. "I don't want to die," she whispered. He looked at her, then stopped running. She looked confused. "What?" He pointed at her chest. "You have something in there they don't understand." Choice. Before she could answer, a loud metal crash echoed through the tunnel above. The drones had found the warehouse and destroyed the decoys. "They'll come here next," the girl said, standing up. "Then we fight," the man replied. Taking his position behind a rusted console, he handed her a pulse grenade. "Ever used one of these?" She shook her head. "I was never trained." "Then listen," he said calmly. "You wait till they enter, then throw this at their core. It'll blind their sensors." She nodded, clutching the grenade tight, her fingers shaking. The sound of footsteps echoed now louder, faster, metallic. Suddenly, the first hunter dropped into the control room from a hole in the ceiling. The man fired fast 2 shots, clean and silent. The hunter staggered but didn't fall. Its voice buzzed, "Subject located. Prepare for extraction." The girl screamed and threw the grenade. Light exploded in blue fire. The machine's sensors cracked, and it slammed into the wall. The man rushed forward, grabbing the girl's hand. "Now run." They ran through a service tunnel, chased by shadows and sparks. Behind them, the other hunters were moving in fast. But as they escaped into The next chamber, the girl looked back and whispered, "I remember something. A face, a voice, ... What voice?" The man asked, panting. "It said you were made to replace them," she whispered, "and I think that means humans." The tunnels opened into a forgotten train station. Broken lights flickered above, and the smell of rust filled the air. The man and the girl stood in silence, breathing hard, listening, for now. The hunters were gone, lost in the maze behind them, but the girl was shaking not from fear, but from memory. "I saw something," she said quietly, "not just a voice. Magus, a voice, Magus. I said my images. Cold rooms, wires, faces watching me through glass." The man sat on a bench, eyes scanning the shadows. "You're remembering your creation," he said. She turned to him, her voice almost a whisper. "Was I ever alive, or just built like a machine?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled something from his bag, a small chip, thin as a needle. "This was in your file," he said. "It's a memory key, probably locked." She took it, stared at it, and pressed it to her temple. A flash of light, a spark of pain, and suddenly, she saw it all. Glass chambers lined with tubes, other beings floating in tanks, some human, some not, scientists in white coats, writing numbers, ignoring screams, and a name, Project Seraph. She fell to her knees, eyes wide, voice trembling. They wanted to build something better than a soldier, better than a human. The man looked at her. "They wanted to replace us." "No," she said, shaking her head. "They wanted to control us." He clenched his fists. "I knew the program existed, but they buried it under fake names and dead agents." She looked at him, her eyes glowing again. "You were one of them, weren't you?" He nodded slowly. "I was assigned to protect one of the labs." Her voice cracked. "Then why are you helping me?" "Because I didn't know what they were doing," he said, his voice heavy with guilt. "And by the time I found out, it was too late." She sat beside him, breathing slowly. "They kept us in the dark, fed us lies, ran tests every day, treated us like broken code. Why did you escape?" He asked. "Because of her," she said, pulling something from her pocket. It was a small photo, torn at the edges, showing a girl who looked human, except her eyes were silver. "She was like me," the alien girl whispered. "We were made in the same batch, but she protected me when the others got sick." "What happened to her?" the man asked. "She didn't survive the upgrades." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They called her a failure." The silence grew heavy again. Then, the girl said something strange, something chilling. "There are more of us, sleeping in the labs, waiting to wake up." The man stood quickly. "Where?" She shook her head. "I don't know yet, but I feel them, like a signal in my bones." Suddenly, a loud crack echoed from above. A trap door opened. Then a small black drone floated down slowly before the man could shoot. The girl lifted her hand, her eyes flashing white. The drone froze in midair, its lights flickering. She closed her fist, and the drone collapsed to the floor, smoking. The man stared at her, shocked. "You weren't built to fight," he said. "You were built to control machines." She nodded. "I'm not a weapon," she said. "I'm a key." Then her voice lowered, serious and cold. "And if the wrong hands find the door, they'll use me to open a war." He picked up the broken drone, pulled a chip from it, and plugged it into his watch. A screen lit up, showing a lab location still active, still hidden. Their building. "Something," he said, "maybe another version of you." The girl stood up slowly, her eyes full of fire. "Then we stopped them," she said. He looked at her, and for the first time, he didn't see a Hafalian, or a test subject, or a mistake. He saw a person. "You're not just surviving anymore," he said. "You're choosing." She nodded. "And I choose to end this." Above them, thunder rumbled as storm clouds gathered. In the dark, The lab lights flickered on again as another experiment opened its eyes. The lab was hidden deep beneath a fake recycling plant to the world. It was just another broken building with smoke and metal smells, but beneath its surface, something was waking up. Back in the old train station, the man finished loading his weapons. He checked the map on his wrist, confirmed. Beside him, the girl sat cross-legged, eyes closed. Wires from the broken drone still glowing in her hands. She was learning faster now, stronger, sharper, every signal she touched. Gave her memories of systems, codes, and old pain. You ready? The man asked, voice calm but tight. She opened her eyes. I'm not sure. I can't run anymore. Then we move, he said. They left the tunnels just before sunrise. Slipping through the city like shadows, the streets were waking up. But no one noticed the girl with glowing eyes or the man with the scarred face. They walked fast, quiet, until they reached the plant. Rusty gates, broken cameras, and silence that was the front. But behind it, scanners buzzed, weapons watched. And something deep underground waited for them. Let me go first, the girl said. I can confuse their sensors. He nodded and handed her a small EMP charge. Just in case you can't, she walked forward, calm, like someone who had nothing left to lose. A drone spotted her, but its lights flickered and died. A laser camera moved but froze mid-scan. She turned her head and whispered, I'm in. The man followed. Moving through the gate like a ghost, they entered the main floral crates. Broken machines, dusty papers, but under the floor. A steel door pulsed with blue light. She touched it, and it opened without a sound. The stairs led down into darkness, cold and endless. As they reached the bottom, lights flickered on one by one. Like waking eyes, the walls were smooth metal, covered in strange markings. This place is older than the war, the man said. I've seen tech like this once. In the Arctic. This isn't just a lab, she said. It's a vault. Suddenly, alarms exploded around them. Red lights flashing, steel doors slamming. A voice echoed from the speakers deep. Human and full of hatred. You brought her back here, John, the voice said. How noble, how stupid. The man's hands tightened on his gun. That voice. He muttered, Commander Reyes. The voice laughed. You think you're saving her? But she's not special, she's property. She's not yours, the man shouted. She's alive. The floor shook, and from behind a wall, a group of armored guards appeared. Weapons up, eyes dead, no emotion, just orders. Protect the girl, the man whispered. She stepped forward, eyes glowing, hands raised. The lights burst above them. The guards screamed as their weapons melted in their hands. She was stronger now, more than she had ever been. I'm not property, she said. I'm the first. One guard tried to fire, but the man was faster. His shots were clean, sharp. And silent, the girl collapsed to her knees. Energy draining fast. I can't hold it much longer, she gasped. He ran to her, pulled her behind cover. Rest, he said. I'll finish this part. No, she said, grabbing his arm. This is my fight too. She reached inside her jacket and pulled out a small data spike. If I get this into the main core, it will free the others. What others? He asked. The ones still sleeping, she said, like Mibu waiting. He nodded slowly. Then we end this together. They fought their way deeper into the lab. Side by side, every hallway was a trap, every room a test. They dodged turrets, burned out scanners, and shut down locks. Finally, they reached the control center tall screens, humming cores, and in the middle, a chair. And in that chair, Commander Reyes himself. Cold eyes, metal arms, half human, half machine. I built this world, he said, standing up. And you're trying to break it? She's not a weapon. The man said, she's proof you were wrong. The girl stepped forward, calm, powerful. Shh. You tried to create perfection by removing choice. She said, "But I chose to be more." He laughed. "You're still just code." She held up the data spike. "Then let's rewrite the ending." He charged at Herb, but the man stepped in front, taking the full blow. He crashed into the wall, blood on his face. The girl screamed, and her body lit up like a star. Energy flowed from her into the walls, into the screens, into the system itself. She stabbed the spike into the core. Lights flashed, sirens screamed, and every chamber in the lab opened. Hundreds of eyes blinked awake, just like hers once did. The control room exploded in light, and Reyes screamed as the system collapsed. The man crawled to her, weak but alive. "You did it," he whispered. She looked at him, glowing but calm. "We did it," and above them, for the first time in years, the sky opened. The lab was burning. Flames danced across the walls. Machines screamed, and steam rose from cracked wires. The lights flickered like dying stars, and in the middle of the chaos, she stood still. The alien girl, no longer weak, no longer hunted. She had set them free. Hundreds of prototypes, born in darkness, now stood awake, blinking, confused, afraid. The man lay beside her, wounded but alive. Blood dripped from his head. His breath was slow, but his eyes were open, watching her. "You did it," he said again, weakly. But she wasn't smiling, because freedom had a cost, and it was just beginning. The others, those like her, didn't speak. They looked around, waiting for orders. "What now?" One of them asked, his voice flat, barely human. She stepped forward. "Now we choose." But before she could say more, the ground shook. A deep rumble echoed below their feet. "What was that?" the man asked, trying to stand. She reached out and steadied him back up, far below, in the lower levels, hidden deeper than any of them had gone. Something old was waking up. A sealed vault, locked for years, had received her signal. She had opened all doors, but not all doors should be opened. Suddenly, alarms flashed red again, louder, faster. A robotic voice screamed from the speakers. "Containment breach level 7. The prototypes turned, fear returning to their eyes. The girl looked at the man. "We need to go deeper." He stared at her, confused. "We just escaped." "No," she said. "We only broke the surface. There's more down there. Something worse." She grabbed a security key from Reyes' fallen body, then looked at the others. "You can stay. Or you can come with me." Some of them nodded slowly, unsure but willing. The man sighed, loaded his last clip, and followed her again. They took an old elevator that groaned under their weight. The walls were dark. The numbers on the panel flickered and died. "This level wasn't on the map," he said, "because it was never meant to be found." She replied. When the doors opened, they entered silence. No alarms, no lights, just cold. Air and metal walls covered in black cables. And then they saw it, a massive room, filled with tanks, not prototypes, not clones, but a single machine, taller than a building. Shaped like a human skeleton but made of shifting metal and living tissue. It was asleep, but breathing. "What is that?" the man whispered. "A fail-safe," she said, her voice hollow. "In case we ever rebelled." Suddenly, screens lit up around the room. Old footage played, labs, tests, failed versions of her, destroyed and deleted. And then a message from Reyes, recorded years ago. "If the prototypes escape, activate Project Godshell." "Godshell," the man muttered. "A machine built to kill machines." The girl stepped forward. Eyes narrowed. "If it wakes up, it won't stop with us. We'll go after everything." The others stepped back, afraid. "But how do we shut it down?" One of them asked. She looked at the center console. "There's one way." She placed her hand on the panel, her energy connected instantly. But the system resisted, trying to block her. The machine stirred, its eyes flickered, its fingers twitched. "Stop." The man said, "You're triggering it." "No," she replied, sweat on her face. "I'm rewriting it." Suddenly, her body shook. The energy was too much. Her knees hit the floor, her voice cracking, too strong. "It's pushing back." He ran to her, pulled her hand away. "You'll die," he shouted. She looked up at him, tears in her eyes. "Maybe I was never meant to live anyway." "No," he said, voice shaking. "You were meant to choose them. You chose life." He lifted her gently, placed her behind a shield, and walked to the console. He inserted the spike she had used before and said, "If anyone deserves a future, it's you." The machine roared awake, eyes burning red. Its voice shook the room. System corrupted, eliminating threats. The man smiled at the girl one last time and whispered, "Humanity isn't weak, it's brave." Then he pressed the final button. Light exploded across the room, and everything vanished in white. When the smoke cleared, the machine was gone. The lab was dead, offline, silent. The girl stood up slowly, pain in her body. She looked around, but the man was gone. Only his coat remained, resting on the cold metal floor. She picked it up, hugged it tightly, and whispered, "You saved me, and now I will save them all." She turned to the others, eyes glowing again, but this time full of fire. "Follow me," she said. "We're not weapons anymore. We are the future." The city didn't know what had happened beneath its streets. Above ground, people lived their lives, unaware that the world had changed. But deep in the ruins of the lab, something new was rising. She walked through the ashes. The man's coat wrapped around her, each step was heavy, but her eyes burned with purpose. The prototypes followed her now, not because of orders, but because of belief. She was not their leader by force, but by choice. "We're not accidents," she said. Standing in front of the broken vault, "We're survivors," behind her. The others nodded, some still unsure, some still afraid, but all awake. "We were made in shadows, but we don't belong there," she said. One of the prototypes stepped forward, young and silent. "What do we do now?" he asked. She looked up into the cracks of the ceiling where morning light tried to enter. "We rise." News began to spread, first on underground networks, then across the surface. A government facility had collapsed. The official story blamed a gas leak, but hackers leaked videos. Strange footage of glowing-eyed beings saving children from fires. Healing wounds, dismantling drones. People were scared, but curious. The girl appeared in a broadcast, standing in a ruined street. No weapons, no mask, just truth. "My name is not X-19, she said. "I don't belong to them. I was built to be a tool, but I became a person." She continued, "The man who helped me, he was human, and he gave his life for mine. I won't forget that." She didn't call for war. She called for justice, for freedom, for peace. And that's when the world truly noticed her. Some humans feared her, said she was the start of another war. But others saw something else, hope. She and the other survivors began to rebuild. They saved people from collapsed buildings, cleaned toxic zones, stopped rogue machines left from old battles. Bit by bit, they earned trust, not with power, but with kindness. And then, something no one expected happened. An old soldier stepped forward, gray hair, missing arm, full uniform. He spoke on live broadcast. "I was part of the program that created her. I was wrong," he said, "and I want to help fix it." That's when the movement truly began. Humans and hybrids, side by side, building shelters. Schools, even homes, the girl once called. A beggar now stood in front of a rising flag, not a flag of war, but a new symbol, two hands. One human, one synthetic, joined together. They called it the Accord. One night, alone, on a rooftop. She looked up at the stars, the city below her. Now carried her name in murals and songs. But she didn't smile. not fully. "I wish you could see this," she whispered to the wind. Holding his coat tight, she remembered his voice, his strength, and the way he never looked at her like a weapon. She wasn't finished, not yet, because even as peace spread, darkness still lingered in secret labs and power-hungry leaders. But she wasn't alone anymore. She had a family now, strange one, made of survivors and believers, and she had a mission. Not to destroy, not to conquer, but to protect. She wasn't a mistake, she was a message. A message that humanity wasn't just blood and bone, it was the courage to stand for someone else. Even when it meant giving everything, she closed her eyes and whispered his name. Once, softly. Then she stood, cape blowing in the wind, light shining on her face, and she walked forward into a world no longer ruled by fear, but by choice.